This is exciting every single time. And I see you smiling over there. Every time I do this, I love being able to bring the best of the best people in the world onto the show. And it's exciting. But this is even more exciting for me because we don't just have the CEO of the company. We don't just have someone who's saving lives and making a difference. We have brand new author and speaker, Kirk Moat, with us today. And I just have one question, and that is, Kirk, how does it feel to be a brand new author now?
Feels incredible. Yeah, I'm super excited. It is something that I've always, dreamed of, something I've always wanted to do, and haven't really had an opportunity to do that or, put the focus into actually doing it until as like recent. So I am stoked beyond all imagination, and you're in for a treat because we got a lot of exciting stuff to talk about today.
When you say, you haven't been able to do it as of recent, how recent are you talking about?
So, I mean, you could say over the past 5 years that I've been in the industry is, all the time collecting information and building your content, but really sitting down, pen to paper, and starting a process of writing a book exactly 8 weeks from today. We started this process.
And you're done.
It's done. I mean, I'm officially a published author. It is on Amazon. You can buy it today only for 99 cents. Tomorrow's going to be $10. So jump in while it's hot, fresh. We get your reviews and let's save lives.
And what's that link for us?
So it's going to be rescuesiteservices.com/saving lives.
What made you want to do the book? You already had a good company, you've already made a difference, but why did you go, instead of a webinar, instead of more speaking right now, instead of doing live streams 14 times a week? I mean, there's so many things that would give you more of a reach. Why did you go, you know what? Let's take it away from digital and go to physical.
Yeah, so probably three main reasons. One is it's a great introduction to me and who I am as a person, my company, what we do, and how we do it. Secondly, is it's an incredible lead generation magnet as well. And what I mean by that is, there's a study recently shown that if you are put head to head with somebody who has a college degree and someone who is a published author, people wanted to hear from the published author over the degree, hands down. Now I have both. I have a degree and I am officially a published author, so that's a double whammy. But the third and final thing is, it builds credibility. And part of speaking and getting into some of the bigger stages that I'm pursuing, one of their initial responses is, "Who are you? What have you done?" And now, a book like this is pretty much the business card for speakers. And so that's the three reasons, an introduction to who I am, what I do, how I do it, lead generation, and finally to build credibility.
Do you mind if I challenge you?
Tell me more.
I think you're making all that up.
Okay. All right.
Is Beth
Come on.
laughing?
I mean, she's in another room right now, so she might be laughing.
I hope she's watching and maybe has some popcorn or something, but I don't think that's the reasons you do it.
Okay.
I think you truly have a passion and want to save lives and you want to reach more people, and you see those three as a conduit to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. Like, I would not listen. I could get a full-time job and make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and and not have any of the worries of building a company, start a startup, and the entrepreneurial cycle and the years it takes. I took Amazon 7 years. I'm in starting year 2 right now. So I'm not doing this because it's easy by any means. I'm doing this because I have a passion for saving lives 100%. But the reason I gave you those three reasons at the beginning was because you can't have reach without revenue. And those three reasons were how to get revenue. And unfortunately, in the society that we live in today, if we want to make an impact, we have to have resources and revenue. And resources and revenue come directly from what we're doing here today.
What kind of impact do you want to have specifically?
Specifically, I want to create a world of lifesavers. We're looking at the number one killer in the world globally. This thing called heart disease claims more lives than any other cause in the world. In the United States alone, we're looking at 475,000, almost half a million and rising, out of hospital cardiac arrest that happen every year in the United States. Over three-fourths happen at home. That's someone you know, that's someone you love. So tell me, am I passionate? Absolutely. Because like, I don't want you to be there looking at your spouse and not able to save her life, looking at a kid, your kid, or maybe your grandparents, coworker, or even a complete stranger, and the fear come across your face because you don't know what to do. Or maybe you do know what to do and you don't have the resources of a defibrillator to, provide that life-saving shock. So that's what Rescue Site AED program is all about. It is about creating a world where no one dies from sudden cardiac arrest, creating a world of lifesavers.
So clearly you have the passion for it, but I know, why don't I just go buy one at the store? I mean, you can get them on Amazon. You're not the only company in town, right? Why would I want to get one from you, and how is your program different?
Yeah, great question. You most certainly can get them from anywhere, Amazon included. And I actually know a lot of my competition out there, which is great. But what makes us different? The Rescue Site AED program is the only AED program in the world that includes a virtual site assessment, the perfect AED for the needs of your organization, the world's leading AED program management solution, training from the world leader in CPR and emergency cardiovascular care, and finally, the mobile app that guarantees your AED is properly maintained.
Now, if you have a few minutes, I want you to break that down for me, but I want to also jump to the maintenance thing because, from a business owner standpoint, I don't want to deal with a lot. I already got a lot to deal with.
Exactly.
Why is the maintenance aspect of this so important?
I'll tell you a quick story. And I just became a client of a company. I won't say their name because we're working with them right now, which is exciting. But during this conversation of becoming a client of this company, they, I'm always closing, right? I'm always selling. I'm always saying, hey, look, this is what you need. And so I found out, I said, do you have AEDs? He goes, I don't know. Let's find out. Talks to his boss. Comes to find out that, hey, they do have AEDs. They're hidden away in the stairwell. And he sent me a picture. And I was like, okay, I have never seen this AED before. Like legit, it is no longer FDA approved. It is so old that when I had to Google it just figure out what it was, it says it's obsolete and you can no longer get bad pads or batteries, the consumables required to save a life. So if something were to happen in their building today, that would be a huge OSHA investigation. That would be a huge like lawsuit because you have created this false sense of security that you have an AED that is ready to rescue when in fact it's just a wall mount and it's not they're going to be able to do anything for you because the batteries are dead and the pads won't be able to work because the adhesives are so old. I say all that to tell you that maintenance of your AED is so critical. And this is just one of so many examples where we go. I always offer a free AED inspection wherever I go. I was like, hey, look, do you mind if I take a look at your AED and just give a free inspection? Sure, why not? And more times than not, the pads and batteries are years out of date. And I'm sitting there going like, guys, this is an issue. And so that's why that is one of the five critical components of a rescue site AED program is the maintenance. Because without it, you aren't ready to rescue.
Well, I'm glad you have it as part of your program because it's something that, like I said, this isn't my industry. It's not my area of expertise, although I'm learning a lot. And you always want to be prepared because when you need it, you want it to work. The
Yeah.
same way when I do these live streams, I don't want to have to set up for hours and hours and hours for the show. But if you
Well,
don't have that, I mean, you can have good intentions, but that's not going to save anyone, will it?
and it won't. And what I've seen more times than not, I'll tell you another story. I had a golf course, a driving range I went to. I said, "Hey, I noticed that you don't have a AED. Can I help you out?" And they're like, "No." I was like, "Well, what do you mean no?" It's like, "We don't have heart attacks here." I was like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "We've never had a heart attack here in the 10 years that we've been in business, and we will not have a heart attack in the next 10 years." I was like, "That's a pretty bold claim, because it doesn't matter how old you are, what your sex is, what kind of diet you're eating, your physical fitness. A sudden cardiac arrest can happen to anyone at any time, regardless of those, you know." And I'm going to interrupt just a second because guess what? That ding was
Another
that
book
was
sale?
that a book just got sold, so that's pretty exciting. People are buying them all over the world, and we're talking like multiple countries right now. So I'm super stoked. But back to the golf driving range, yeah, I was shocked. I was like, "Are you kidding me? You are willing to, bet that no one is going to have a sudden cardiac arrest? It only takes once. It's a local business, and everyone will know, and people will be like, I ain't going there again, right?" And so my mantra is, I'd rather you have an AED 10 years early than 10 minutes too late, because at best, when you call 911, at best, you're going to have a response time of 7 minutes. Do you know it only takes 4 for your brain to have irreversible brain damage? And how long did it take you to find that person? Were they on, the third, hole, the fourth hole? I mean, it could take you over 3 minutes easily to realize that someone's down, call the ambulance. They get there. Oh, where is he? Well, he's 4 holes into the golf course. Oh my gosh, you got an
And that's
issue.
even if you have one and you can get to them, let alone if you don't have one.
Exactly. And so these things have to be everywhere. We're talking about every public place. So banks, grocery stores, gas stations, hotels, movie theaters, every public place and every private place. So remember that first statistic I told you about, talking about over three-fourths of those 475,000 Americans, over three-fourths of that number, those deaths happen at home. So my ultimate goal is to get a defibrillator in every single home in America, every single home in Canada, Australia, Europe, and the whole world, because then and only then have we created a world of lifesavers.
What about do you think about for businesses when you mentioned the golf course? If you have such a large place, like maybe even a mall, how many should they have? Because there's no way, or the airport. There ain't no
Yeah.
way you're going from one end to the other in 4 minutes.
I tell you what airport does this incredible job, and that is Hartsfield Jackson Airport here in the United States or here in Atlanta, Georgia. And they do an incredible job of AEDs. I think they have cardiac science, and literally almost every 100 feet, I think it is, or 100 yards. I mean, it's there's like over 400 units in their airport. They know how to have a defibrillator, and like that is the response time that we're talking about. Okay, because the ultimate goal here, drop the shock. You want, and what that means is from the time someone has a heart attack, hits the deck, from the time someone sees it, goes, gets the AED, comes back, puts it on him, and shocks him, needs to be between 3 and 5 minutes. Again, 4 minutes is the time it takes for your brain to have irreversible brain damage. So 3 minutes is kind of our goal. But guess what? When you have a defibrillator every 100 yards, we can get that down to about 60 seconds. And every minute that you go without a shock is 7 to 10% chance of you not surviving.
Wow.
But if you are within that first 60 seconds, you have a 90% chance of survival. Okay, and that's what Rescue Site AD program is all about.
Well, you got me more excited about it, and I was already excited about it. Why don't you walk me through it? Because I know you said there's 5 critical components.
There are 5 critical
I'm
components.
not sure if we have time for all 5. You had touched on the maintenance. Tell us what they all are, and let's see if we can walk through a couple of them, maybe one, two, or three.
Yes. So the first critical component is going to be assessment, and that is essentially where we do a virtual site assessment of your location and whether it's your home, your office building. So you could have one AED and one franchise, or you could have thousands of AEDs all across the world. And this program, we can actually manage it from one software. Remember the app I told you about? Yeah, that's what we can do right here. We have the world's leading AED program management solutions software. And that's what we license to make sure that the Rescue Site AED program is the best in the world. So the first thing that we're going to do is do a virtual site assessment to make sure that you have enough AEDs strategically placed throughout your facility to make sure that you have that drop to shock time down to no more than 3 minutes, but ideally 60 seconds.
Like you're saying, because if you have it every, what'd you say, 100 feet?
100 yards, 100 feet. I mean,
How would the airport know? Do they have signs? I mean, if a bystander's just around, they're not going to know they have 40 units. I thought they would have more than just one, but I wasn't expecting to hear 40 of them.
next time you fly into Atlanta, check it out. It like legit. When you get off the plane, every about 100 yards, 100 feet, you're going to see an AED, and it's well marked. What the signage is there, and you can't miss them, especially if you're looking for them. And it's one of those things that it's like it's not a new technology. It's been around for decades, but it's still semi new in the sense that the general public isn't thinking about it. And so that's part of the um, what we're doing here as far as marketing is concerned. We have to have a little education marketing style because a lot of kids aren't taught this in schools as of recently. American Heart Association has been able to advocate for high schoolers to have a requirement to take CPR before they graduate, and I think we're in the 30s. We're close to 40 states out of the 50. But we're so close to getting all 50 states to make it a requirement. And so that's incredible in and of itself.
Well, I'm glad that it's advancing that way, and I know where mine is at the church. I pass it every week walking in.
That's awesome.
It's on the left-hand side before you get into the main lobby, and I
And I
was
hope you never
excited to see that. But when you said the 100 yards, 100 feet, it made me think like, how do you calculate that based on how big the property of the business is, or even a home? Because homes aren't the same size that they used to be. They're a lot bigger.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what I tell my clients when we're doing a walkthrough of their facility. I'm working with a steel company right now, and we did a walkthrough of the company, and it was just like, okay, we're going to take a stopwatch. We're going to see how long it takes us to casually walk from point A to point B. And basically, my thought process is there is like, okay, you got to market to the lowest common denominator. And I mean, that is the slowest person on is employed by you. Okay. And so like, how long would that slowest person take to walk from their desk to the AED back to where the emergency is? How long will that take? And depending on how long that takes, we might need to have a second, third, or fourth AED strategically placed throughout your steel mill.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because my first thought was, yeah, you could probably run from one side to the other, but if you can't run,
Especially like specifically in the steel mill situation or any kind of manufacturing plant, you have heavy machinery. You have 18 wheelers in and out. There's a lot of hazards that you got to be aware of. Stuff on the floor. I mean, you can one of part of training, and that's going to be the second critical component that I want to help share you with. But the second critical component that we talk about is training, and what we talk about in training is how you want to create no more than one victim. So what happens when you don't assess a scene for scene safety? Well, guess what? You now have a second victim instead of just one. What happens if you go mouth to mouth on someone, a complete stranger? Guess what? You don't know what they have. That means you're going to take whatever diseases that they have, give them to yourself, your spouse, your kids, your family. You have so many more victims than that. Just one that you're potentially going to be saving the life with our Rescue Site AED program. But this is all talked about during the training component of our book, and we get to tell you exactly how we don't create more than one victim at most. and ideally no victims, because our goal here is target zero.
And that's that. And Target Zero is creating that world with no cardiac arrests,
That's right. Creating, well,
or
not creating
no
a world with no
deaths from it.
cardiac arrest, but creating a world where no one dies from sudden cardiac arrest, because there is a bystander that has the knowledge as well as the resources, and that's the AED that's right there, ready to operate, that is rescue ready, mind you, back to the maintenance. And so with those, components, with our rescue site AED program, we're able to put that all together and work like clockwork to create a rescue that is, I say perfect, but is so close to perfection that, that's what we're here for. We want to make sure that you have the knowledge and the resources to make sure that you can save a life.
Now you're sharing a lot here, but what if I think I'm good already? How much more are you sharing in the book that is critical?
Oh man, that's just three of the five critical components that we just discussed. And this, so I'll give you another example of a client that we're working with, and their very first response to me is, "Oh, we don't need a defibrillator. There's a fire department right down the street." I'm like, I hate to break it to you, but that fire department isn't there just for you. They're literally taking care of the whole county. And so, with that said, if they're off at another location, or get this, this is something, being on the inside. I used to do private security, and knowing a little bit about the 911 process here, I found out that if you are an ambulance is headed to a scene of a stabbing of an adult victim, and they're literally in the parking lot of the stabbing, if they get a call that a kid is in danger or needs help or assistance, guess what? They're going to reroute that particular ambulance that's 100 feet away from that guy that's bleeding out to death to go save the kid's life. And that's part of that's amazing, right? I mean, that's how much we value children as far in the 911 process there, which is excellent and how it should be. But imagine if that situation was the plant that had a heart attack of one of their executives. They're literally pulling into the parking lot to go save that guy's life, and they had to get rerouted to go take care of a kid on the other side of town. They didn't have an AED because, well, the fire department was right there, right? No, you have to have a defibrillator for yourself, whether that's your home or your company.
How long does it take to train someone? So you got me thinking about that executive, because obviously you want to save the kid, but you also want to save the executive. And if you have a company with able-bodied adults in it, they should be trained and know what to do, so that way you're not creating excuses and deaths by saying, well, there's a fire department down the road, or a ambulance department down the road, or whatever. And
Exactly.
it brings me to the training part. If you were to have people have staff meetings all the time, how long would it take to go through the training and go, hey, we just went from our workforce of 20 people, 50, 100, 200, 500, and
Just
now
lost.
everyone is trained?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, if you were to hire Rescue Site Services to come out and do the training portion of the one of the five critical components that we're talking about in this book, then what you'll have is a 2-hour session with one of our American Heart Association certified instructors. And that 2 hours, you'll cover, compressions for, we'll start from the beginning. You'll cover the scene safety. Then you'll go into compressions, breaths, mouth to mouth, as well as the mask version. And then we put it all together after we go through the use of an AED. And then we have a few bonuses at the end, and that includes your choking, how to relieve choking, as well as naloxone use. And that is nothing more than an opioid drug reversal. So it takes 2 hours. It takes 2 hours. And honestly, we have a blended version. If you don't want to spend 2 hours of your workday or come in on a Saturday, you can actually give your employees a video to watch and get the first half, the knowledge. And then what we do is we come in and we do what's known as a skills test. and that this makes sure that you can pump on the chest properly, the proper depth, the proper rate, the proper everything. Same thing with the breasts. AED use, make sure that they're familiar with the AED that they just lease from rescue site services. And so we want to make sure that they are aware and understand how to use the resources that are at their disposal at their situation specifically for their organization.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I had already talked to you, and I'm excited to get one for my company. And
Yeah.
I was reading through your book, and I was shocked when you were talking. Well, really, no pun intended. Um,
Oh, I see what you did there.
I actually did not intend that, but I was shocked when I was reading it, and it says 100 to 120 beats per minute.
Right? Yeah.
That's not like, oh yeah, I've done CPR. Oh, well, that's pretty aggressive.
It is very aggressive. And one huge misconception is
And what was
that
that? If you don't have a machine like the manual process or something?
what do you mean the manual process?
It said something like if you don't have the defibrillator, you need to be cranking on them. Walk me through the 100 to
Yeah,
120
got
because
Yes. So typically, for someone who's trained that goes through our training, you're going to know how to do mouth to mouth with, your one-way valve to protect you from whatever they have. And then you're going to go back to forth 30 compressions, two breaths, 30 compressions, two breaths. And you do that continually until the defibrillator arrives. Once the defibrillator arrives, then that's boss. You listen to the prompts, analyzing heart rhythm. You say clear, shock advised. Again, you say clear. Someone who's praying over the victim touching the pinky toe with their pinky finger, that AED is, so smart, it can pick up the person's heartbeat. So you want to make sure that no one's touching the patient during this process. Shock advised, deliver shock, and most AEDs nowadays have an automatic feature, so you no longer have to touch a button to deliver the shock. I know that's a lot of the questions that I get is, hey Kirk, can this hurt somebody? Like if I have this in my house, will this hurt my kid? And the answer is no. And the reason why is because it's only going to shock two shockable rhythms. That's VFib or VTAC. And if it's not one of those two shockable rhythms, I can put it on myself now and it will say analyzing heart rhythm. And then it will say shock not advised because I have a perfectly normal heart rhythm. So in the case of a not like back to what we're talking about, your question, if you don't have a defibrillator, then you're calling 911 waiting for them to bring one, but you can at least do compressions and breaths. And again, if you don't have the mouthpiece to protect yourself, then you're only going to do something called hands-only CPR, and that is continual compressions from start to finish, no break. And hopefully there might be, a friend that's nearby, or you can enlist someone else to show them exactly what you're doing so you can take breaks every, 1 or 2 minutes, because this gets exhausting. This is very tiring. You're literally, if you're doing it properly, you're breaking ribs. And that's another thing that people are like, oh my gosh, am I breaking a rib? And the answer is yes. If you're doing it properly, you're breaking ribs. And that's perfectly fine because guess what? I'd rather them be revived with an injury than stay dead. And that's part of the training, and we'll explain all that in great detail so that you feel confident about your ability to correctly respond to an emergency situation.
now to the point of breaking the ribs. I mean, I'm sure that someone's listening to this going, well, what if I get sued? Can you touch
Yeah,
on that?
great question. And that is another common question that I get is, let's talk about liability and lawsuits. And guess what? Every single state in the United States has something called Good Samaritan laws. And each state has incredible laws that protect you as the bystander who is doing the rescuing. Okay. And so what I tell my students when I teach them CPR is I'm saying, look, if you operate within the scope of how I'm teaching you, that's breaths, that's compressions, that AED use, choking, and the lock zone. If you operate within those 5 components that we teach you, you're fine. You're covered under the Good Samaritan law. But the second that you take a pin and try to perform a tracheotomy and that you saw on some sort of TV show, come on, I didn't teach you that. And then when I get brought to court, I got to say, no, I didn't teach them that. So yeah, as long as you're operating within the scope of what you're taught, you are 100% covered when it comes to being sued.
You keep talking about the plant being at an office. What if it's a wet area? Can you shock someone on water?
Good question. So, if you're at a pool, if you are like a neighborhood pool is a great example. But yeah, there's several situations, and in fact, even if you're not at a wet area or pool, oftentimes when you're having a heart attack, you start sweating, and so you're drenched by the time that someone comes to you and starts performing CPR. Part of that process is doing a quick drying off of the chest area. And what you got a paper towel within your rescue kit inside of the AED that we're going to lease for you. And so what happens is you take that paper towel type cloth, you do a quick dry. If you're at the pool, you can take a towel. You can do the same thing. You can use someone else's shirt or whatever the case may be. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? So I know that you can shock someone that's in a puddle. It's not going to be in the world because the only thing that's going to receive the shock is going to be right between the two probes. It's going to be right here and a little bit lower. You might not be able to see because of the video, but as long as they're placed properly and they're not like all over the place, there's pictures. You're fine. Again, this is why we train, right? And that's why it's called a critical component because yes, sure, the AED is going to another book sold. Get excited. As long as we have you train properly, then here's what happens. If you aren't trained, you're going to train. There's a great quote. I'm trying to remember what I said in the book. It was about a Navy SEAL, and it's attributed to a Navy SEAL, but we don't know who it is. But the quote goes something like this, and that is, when you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to the lowest level of your training. And explained is basically, if you're going to respond how you train. If you don't train, you're not going to respond correctly, right? And that's why it's such a critical component to our rescue site AED program. Because yes, the defibrillator is going to tell you exactly what to do. Yes, you could figure it out by listening to the prompts, but how much time are you going to waste when seconds count? And so that's why training is a critical component to your life-saving AED program.
Well, Kirk, I appreciate you for sharing all the tips and the insight that you've shared because no one wants someone they care about, love, a coworker, friend, family, whatever the case may be. You don't want to see them hurt, let alone die.
Right.
And before you told me about this, it really wasn't on my mind, and I don't think it is for a lot of people, but I'm so glad there's people like you out there that are this passionate and committed to making a difference because it's going to happen now.
And that's the thing, originally my ultimate goal, like I said, is to get a defibrillator in every home, but we can't do that until they're in every business because who works at businesses, right? Who works at businesses? Those are the consumers that live in homes and apartments and condos and hotels and whatever. Those are the people that will make the decisions ultimately. And until they're not, unless they're in the business that they work at, the light bulb is not going to go off in their head and say, you know what, I should probably have one of these at the house too. If I care about my spouse, if I love my kids and anyone else who's living with me, grandparents, in-laws, if I truly love them, would I not do anything in my power to make sure that their safety, health, and well-being takes precedence over every other expense? Absolutely. And that's what we're here for.
Well, I'm so glad you are, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much.
What else would you want to say before we go if someone doesn't have one right now?
If someone, let's see, whether you don't have a defibrillator, whether you have one and it's old and out of warranty, like the company I was telling you about earlier, whether you have thousands of defibrillators in locations all across the world, this book is for you. This program is for you. Rescue Site AED program is for you. And I want this is something that's really cool. I want to actually tell you. Let me pull this up real quick. Let's see, picture. I'm pulling this up from my book, and I want to read this to you because it's such a great picture here. And here's what it says: Picture a day when your spouse is able to save your life with your new home AED. Picture a day when a coworker turns to you and says, "Aren't you glad that our pads and batteries weren't expired when we used it to save the life last week?" And picture a day when a friend, family member, or even a complete stranger collapses from a heart attack or sudden cardiac arrest, and because you have a defibrillator, and because it was properly managed, and because you had to previously been trained in CPR, you were able to save a life. You.
That's powerful. Well, I appreciate you for sharing and what you do. I can't wait to hear all your success stories from it, and everyone gets a copy of the book and implements this, because it really, truly will change the world.
I almost forgot. I told people I was going to get some special bonuses out on this film. So just real quick, I want to tell you, make sure I say it right, because I got my operations manager over here making sure I do this right. Okay, so we are going for anyone who reads this book and signs a 5-year lease agreement for their rescue site AD program. We're going to provide a free virtual site assessment for your company. Free virtual site assessment. And for only three, the first three, and again, if you're watching this next week thinking, "Oh crap, I think that the first three are already gone," it may not be, because sometimes these deals take a couple of weeks to finalize. So the first three companies that signs a 5-year lease with me, I'm going to give them a free CPR training for 12. That is over $1,000 value.
I
That
think one
is
just came in.
boom. I just got it. He's like, "I'm in. Let's go." And this is awesome. So, two things right here. We got a virtual site assessment or free CPR training for 12, and that's only for the first three. Okay. So if you want to claim those two for
So that would be someone that sounds like it would be for a nice size office, or uh, yeah, pretty much a nice size office that has, like you're saying, 10 to 12 people.
yeah, it could be a church or
Yep,
synagogue.
church.
It could be a
Senior
hotel.
staff at a restaurant.
Yeah, it could be a restaurant. It could, like, several states actually require restaurants to have them now, which is awesome. So it could be a restaurant. It could be a hotel. It could be a bank, grocery stores. I mean, anyone is eligible for this, but specifically probably the small business owner is going to pick this up really quickly. We have a lot of hits with the gym franchises and such. So if you're a small business owner and you own a gym franchise, this is an incredible deal for you. So first three people, and here's what you got to do: rescuesiteservices.com/saving lives. rescuesiteservices.com/saving lives. And you can click and basically set up a time to talk with me to figure out how we can get you your free CPR class scheduled. So let's do that for you today. And again, the first three people that do that, we're going to do that for you. And everyone listening is eligible for the free virtual site assessment.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you for sharing, and I can't wait to tell more people about it. I got your book today, and it's
Awesome.
fantastic. Congratulations once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, Expert Authority World, you heard it here. We'll see you on the next one. Have a great day, and God bless.